окуповувати.
Its neighbors occupy their territory, and the world has to find an answer for that. In order to find support of the world, we need to speak the same language. We need to speak about common issues that are important for everybody. And so this is what we're going to speak about. The threat of the proliferation of nuclear weapons is very timely. And before we could rely on written guarantees, but now if we just leave Ukraine, for every country that is not a member of the nuclear club, it will be a clear signal. The only thing they can use to protect the territorial integrity is nuclear weapons. And for countries like Iran, we just will not be able to find any other means of security. The problem number two that we're facing during the Crimean crisis, the threat of the economical renovation. When the world started to overcome the financial crisis, when the countries of the European Union could be positive about their own economical forecast, so now this crisis that threatens long-term investment projects, since investors, financial markets, are very concerned about this. And the question is if the countries are ready to change their budget preferences. Are these all issues that arose during the situation in Crimea? And this is an issue the world has to find an answer, a formula, maybe in the form of some international conference where that should gather leaders, the best leaders of the world, in order to develop a new system of collective security. And for Ukraine, individually, as we found out, we're not a member of existing active security systems, and we have to take a decision about how we should guarantee peace for our citizen. The problem number two that we faced during the Crimean situation is the threat of humanitarian catastrophe. Right now, the population of Crimea, the citizens of different nations that are in Crimea, ask themselves the questions: should we just flee? There are just some unknown people, some military people in the streets. We hear wearing news on the TV, and there are no Ukrainian channels in Crimea. And every day we have very threatening news, and it just warms up the situation. And now we are on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe. And if it happens, that would just jeopardize the stability in the whole region. The third point is very important: the problem of Crimean Tatars. I had the opportunity to talk to the leaders of this prideful and great nation, and they ask themselves a question: will they just deport us? Putin is associated with Stalin among this nation because Putin spent lots of efforts to bring out the image of Stalin. And the Crimean Tatars who survived the deportation ask themselves a question for the next time if Ukraine is able to protect them. Few people in the world knew the history of these people. 300,000 people who are Muslims, and they are native to this area. They are able for a high level of self-organization, and now we They are under threat of so-called green people that provoke the local population, native population, for aggression. I heard from them that they organize patrol groups in order to eliminate any attacks to the sites, important sites, and this problem should be solved. We should find the way out, how to eliminate that. Point number 4. Ukrainian militaries, their families. We, as a Ukrainian government, as a Ukrainian state, we must find an answer how to ensure their safety and safety of their families, because we have confirmed information that Russian forces in Crimea has been developing plans for how to pressure their families in order to change their position, in order to make them change the commitment to Ukrainian law. And I think we will be able to use diplomatic informational methods, or in a worst case, military methods, in order to solve this conflict peacefully and to eliminate any ethnical confrontation and bloody conflict.
Please introduce yourself. Wait. Ekaterina Filipenko, TRK Ukraine news program. We hope that in Crimea it will be possible to settle the conflict, resolve it. We remember your press conference at the Verkhovna Rada when the Party of Regions forced your husband to leave the country. Is he back? Is he planning to come back? And the second question is on elections to the mayor's office. Will you discuss it with Mr. Lutsenko? Maybe you will find some compromise person, or maybe each of one of you will be running for the office. Or what is your program? What are 3 major things that you will be doing for Kievites? The first question, it's about my husband. He's back in Ukraine. He came back when there were still battles going on. He just bought the ticket and came back today. He received the notice from the military commissariat, and I'm sure that Kiev deserves to have legitimate authorities, the ones that Kievites need. We still have time till the moment when the candidates, nominees are to be registered. I know that many colleagues are still thinking whether to get nominated or not, and many journalists are looking at them and they are trying to forecast how the campaign will be going on. I participate there in order to win. I'm sure that Kiev needs an adequate mayor who will be able to organize the team, which will be able to address many issues, especially the issue of human-made catastrophe. My first task is to change the attitude of Kiev bureaucrats to their work and to their clients, because previously this attitude was quite arrogant, with people having to stand in lines and having to give bribes. But now we would like the officials, the bureaucrats, to understand that they are hired managers. They have to provide services quickly, efficiently, with a smile. If we change the attitude, we will change the result. Now I'm getting together the team. I am open for volunteers in my election campaign, and I'm sure that these elections, this campaign, will be the first one of that type. In Kiev, we'll be doing crowdfunding like it's done in Western companies. During Western campaigns, will be supported by volunteers, will be getting the team, not so that no one knows who's there, but we will be doing it all openly, efficiently. And Narodna Pravda from Kharkiv. To what extent you believe that the pressure of the world community on Putin what should be the is this pressing on Putin sufficient enough in order to resolve the conflict without blood being shed? And can really Putin use a nuclear weapon? Which language should I answer? Russian? First of all, whether there are enough efforts or not, the result will show. Putin now refuses from any negotiations, from participation in any negotiation groups. Now the international observers are under threat. We have never had the precedents when the members of international organizations would be attacked. He's violating such diplomatic rules. So now, are the efforts of international community sufficient? No, it will be sufficient when he sits at the table of negotiations and when he has to accept the position of the world community, when he will have to leave the territory of the independent state. Free journalist, your name is related to the scandal when Berkut left Kiev and with the weapons, and now these weapons will be used in Crimea. So how are you planning to disarm your own criminal groups? Besides the world community, what will our members of parliament do with the situation in the Crimea? We hear some statements from the president, but we do not hear any statements from the Verkhovna Rada. First of all, in Kiev, I was working on accepting the conditions of capitulation of Sumy Berkut and Lugansk Berkut. I have nothing to do with Crimean Berkut. At night, from the 21st on the 20th and 21st, these were Sumy and Lugansk Berkut. The conditions for them to leave the territory of Kiev was the fact that they had to surrender their weapons. They were leaving without ammunition and weapons, and our self-defense needed it, because at that moment the self-defense of Maidan would take the function on itself to defend Kiev from against any unforeseeable situations. For me, it was really important to disarm potential participants of the military conflict in the capital, because otherwise I'm afraid that the situation in Kiev could be very, very drastic. We can argue about that a lot, but being at the negotiations, going to the negotiations with the people who were pointing at me the machine guns, I understood what my duty is and what result I have to achieve. Talking about the statements from the Verkhovna Rada, please understand correctly. I'm convinced that now we can try and demonstrate force, aggression, but I would like our government officials to demonstrate wisdom. What have the statements ever helped to save a life of at least one person? Have they helped to resolve a very difficult conflict? And in the Crimea, we have a difficult conflict. So there will be no statements, but there will be adequate and courageous steps. Unfortunately, we cannot hear the question. It's not. Please examine that. No. Yeah. Association of Polish Journalists in Ukraine. I address you as the candidate to the position of the mayor of the city. Do you have any items in your programs which, for the mayor of a big megapolis, from the very beginning, which is multicultural megapolis, do you have any items there related to the situation of the ethnic minorities? And there are a lot of them there. I have returned from Prague, and the city gave a big house there for ethnic minorities. They just gave away. That was from the budget of the state. Will you be doing anything like that? And if not, then on behalf of such minorities, I would like to request you to do so. Okay, talking about my program, this will not be the program of Olesya Orobets. This will be the program of Kievites and the task from Kievites to Olesya Orobets. We'll be writing it together, listening to such needs, and I believe we will find how to commonly resolve this problem and many others. Thank you for recommendation. Будь ласка.
Doroshenko, I'm Holova in New Zealand. I want to ask you a question about the diaspora. A lot of people in Australia and New Zealand want to come over to Ukraine to help Ukraine. It's not just myself, it's others as well. Do you see that the Ukrainian diaspora has a lot to offer Ukraine in terms of their professional training and education?
Definitely, and thank you so much for coming. Your assistance and your attention is priceless. Over the 3 months of revolution, we've seen a lot of efforts from our diaspora, from Ukrainians all over the world, US, Canada, France, Italy, Spain, Australia, all over the world. Whenever Ukrainians leave, including Russia actually, the efforts to consolidate and focus the attention of your governments on what's going on in Ukraine, to get better understanding and clear picture of what are the threats and real needs of the Ukrainian people. We are not here to demand, we are not on the position of demand, but as members of one big political nation, we are very happy to have you on such a position. What you can do is to continue pressure and focus the attention of your government to the Crimean issue, to try to solve it, that the Ukraine will stay integral and independent. This is in utterly need. And definitely, if you have an opportunity to come and see on your own eyes the very historical events that are going on right now in our country, then please come. We need your hands and brains and attitude. Thank you.
Graf Pruszyński, Toronto, Goniec Polski. I'm very sorry to tell you one very sad thing. I have a lot of friends in Ukrainian community in Toronto.
Okay.
And they came in after 1990, happy. There was finally Ukraine. They came with money, with goodwill, and they all were robbed by local sons of a bitch. And a lot of Ukrainians few years ago told me, I will invest in any country except Ukraine. But the issues which I'm really interested in is the following. The Polish community and the Catholic have built a Catholic church, St. Michael's. This church has not been returned to the Poles or the Catholic Church to be. Well, the question is very simple. If you are the mayor of this charming city, will you return this church to the Catholic Church or not? Yes or no? Thank you.
I'm really very sorry for our Canadian colleagues. In 1990, I was 8, and really I was robbed as well. As to the premises of the church, I'm aware that there are conflict situations over a lot of religious premises in Kiev. And I can assure you that being a mayor, I will find the best solution to that issue. I can now not propose you the ready answer, because I'm not in the situation. I'm a lawyer in my profession. I haven't seen the documents. I do not have the insight over the situation, but I can assure you that I will find time and efforts to get deep inside and get a good solution. Hope that Poles and Ukrainians and Canadians will be fine with that.
Thank you.
And there is a new TVI channel, and we will hope for the better, and we will be prepared for the worst. So if it's a negative scenario, if Russia takes over Crimea, it's logical that the conflicts will Ukrainian ethnical population or Tatars it will begin, maybe a humanitarian catastrophe. I want to find out if Ukraine and Russia develop any plan how to protect supporters of Ukrainian independence, if there is some programs of how to move people to continental Ukraine, and how do you develop any plans how to supply water and food to Crimea and resources? Well, I had a conversation with Andrei Parabi about that issue, about the first issue, and the Security Council and they're developing a plan B or plan C for any unforeseen situation, and we will try to get back control over the territory, and the law enforcement bodies are in a half-destroyed state, and it's very hard to be in the position of developing a plan. So I hope the Parliament will be able to vote for a ready answer. There will be some changes in the budget in order to strengthen the financing of the army. The second issue, speaking about any supplying of gas, water, electricity, we understand that these issues are under threat. We do not control the situation in Crimea. Ukr the telecom company, national telecom company, Ukrainian TV channels, you know the situations, and other sites of infrastructure are controlled by other forces or have a hard situation. I will not teach you. You understand yourself that first and foremost, the food catastrophe and supply of water and a start of agricultural works that are about to start. The Crimea will be without food, and there's a series of industrial sites of so-called continuous cycle. And we are not sure if they will be able to produce their goods, and we will have to find answers for these questions. Elvira Bulat, Press Europe. I have this question, the situation in Crimea. I'm from Crimea because, so I'm really concerned about this. The situation in Crimea, it could be eliminated, could be prevented, and the first signals we had were in January and in February. The situation was grave. Just please comment how adequate Mr. Avakov and his position, because the first signal from Konstantinov when he made a statement about the Crimea transition to Russia, why these people were not arrested, the people who separatist and who started separatist movement in Ukraine. What is that? Was it helpless state, or he was interested, or he had any kind of agreement? Well, first, if we choose answer this question, the problem of separatism did not start last year. In 1994, when there were attempts to go independent, this situation was very grave, and the sports, the increasing of military forces, information policy in Crimea, all these was a time bomb, and it led to this catastrophe. And the answer to this question will be the fact that Ukraine is guilty before Crimea with not solving the issues of Crimea, and what Ukraine can do about life of Crimea as a part of Ukraine is the question. And many questions of language or joining NATO were used by politics only for the electoral campaigns. They sow the seeds of untrust among Crimeans and the central power of Ukraine. These prerequisites were seen long ago. So thinking, we can't just solve the issue thinking that the problem is 1 or 2 months old. It's silly. And answering the question about Mr. Avakov, I'm ready to discuss his actions. I'm not able to discuss his personal qualities, his intentions, because it is out of rational actions. Did he have possibility to arrest the leaders of separatist movement? I think if he had this possibility, he would do that. If he had a possibility to arrest Yanukovych, where he hid in Crimea, I think he would do that. Any other action from his side would be taken as irresponsible action in Ukrainian government. Well, at least this is how we perceive it.
So the village of Maidan is going to stand for at least until the presidential elections, but as the future mayor, as potential future mayor of Kiev, how long do you think it can stand? And second question, what would be your vision for Maidan Niezależności, the square, and the Avenue Krещатик?
Thank you. It is so nice to have peaceful questions, even during war. You know, to have like 5 minutes to think of how it will be when the war will be over. The huge challenge for any politician ever entered Maidan was to understand that Maidan cannot be governed. Maidan cannot be told what to do and whom to love. So definitely there should be a decision of Maidan, what will be the destiny of Maidan. And the other huge challenge was for anyone participating or observing to understand and take that Maidan is not a territorial location. It's a new type of thinking, new type of responsibility, self-organizing, responsible attitude. And I do hope that Maidan will stay as a factor in Ukrainian politics forever, because citizens will no longer treat politicians as gods. They are hired managers, hired for special tasks with special responsibility, will deliberately small salary and huge things to do. Answering particularly what will happen to barricades, to those special places where you cannot stand without tears, and this special street that already was named in terms, how do you call it in English? What is the best translation for the best?
Heavenly 100. Heavenly.
We already have a name, and probably we will find a form how to state both remembering and giving our
Heroes.
yes, and functioning as a city center, so that will be comfortable for communication and transport and existence. So probably this was one of the issues that I'm planning to negotiate with volunteers, with those who will come to start my campaign, and we will consider different options and we will pick up the best one. Thank you.
Follow up on that.
Sorry, there was a question over there.
Alain Guillemot from the daily newspaper La Croix, a French daily paper. You were very much involved in the people who disappeared during these 3 months and the killing as well. And I would like to know, are you still involved in this, in following this, the inquiry? Do you have some news about how going on the inquiry about people who disappeared? And did you find some evidence that there was some extrajudicial group of people in charge of kidnapping or killing of some of the participants of the demonstration?
First, positive. During Maidan, this self-organized group called Euromaidan SOS proved to be the best option to find people. Working together with them, we managed to find hundreds of missing people. What we've done was so effective that never ever before in Ukraine missing people were found so quickly. So they are practically hundreds of people that first of all found out that they were missing, because some of them just left their phones or forgot to call their relatives, and you know, the all nervousness of the situation. So the biggest majority of them were just found just thanks to communicating the information. But the other pile we managed to find in clinics, in prisons, and even in autopsies. So what should be done is this practice, these best practices, how to find people, should be shared with the police. Because our police before that proved to be ineffective in finding people. What is the situation right now? We have to change priorities, as we have already the first warnings from Crimea about missing people. And we have to find our way to start finding people there. Because as it's going on about Maidan missing people, we still have few, but they're not as many as we had before. They're not 100. They are like 3 to 4 people, as far as I know right now. Some of them were missing even before Maidan, but relatives probably have seen them in some TV air, so they continue to have hope that probably they will be found. We have a huge issue in Crimea right now. We had already this scandalous information about the representative of the UN being kidnapped, and we have information from our military servants there that their families are under threat of kidnapping. So we have to think pro result how we will be capable to solve this issue in Crimea, having the experience in Maidan. And yes, I do follow the story, and when we have urgent matters in clinics, in some unrecognized bodies, and things like that, I participate in the very urgent and very tough issues still.
Maybe this isn't your province, but Michael Hammer's like, do you have plans to do any kind of like lustration with the police to try to go through them and try to throw out the bad apples, which may be not just the bottom of the barrel, half the barrel or whatever, and maybe to vastly increase the salaries? Like I said, I don't know if that's a city function, that may be, a national government.
I'm still a member of parliament, so this is my task to do as well. I'm aware how much the illustration and anti-corruption activity is needed, and what is a huge demand of the citizen to do that. The only excuse why it's not have started yet are the huge horrible problems our government is facing, such as Crimea, the war with Russia, and economic, we are on the brink of economic failures, so we have to stabilize the situation there. But as long as we have these issues at least coped, I don't say solved, we have to start it. My best case scenario is the Georgian reform, and I do hope that we will find political will to implement that. My personal track record of corruptioners, I've started 4 years ago, following closely the tender procedures, the budgetary expenditures, when a huge amount of money were spent by state bodies purchasing something. And I have my own catalog, catalog, with all signatures, who've stolen, who covered, who haven't found the criminal deeds in stealing huge amount of budgetary money. So I do have that. Our first achievement in that was our claim to Europeans to start the sanctions, personal targeted sanctions. We demanded that for 2 years when we started the Euro integration process, because we were aware that if not stopping those bad apples from stealing from a budget and showing the example to the whole hierarchy of law enforcement bodies and other state bodies that you can steal and you won't be punished. So we were asking Europeans to start the personal sanctions. We were pleading for those personal sanctions all over the revolution. Thanks God, Canada was the first to start this process of personal sanctions. Now we see the lists of the former Ukraine officials being under the threat of freezing bank accounts, visa problems, and criminal persecution in the EU. We see that as a very good first step, and I do hope that we will have political will to continue.
Hello again. In 2012, I came here from New Zealand representing the community on a diplomatic mission for the elections. When I was an election observer, I observed some fraudulent electioneering activities at one of the largest polling stations in Kiev, and I covertly even took pictures of this. And it was basically guys sitting in a room stamping election forms. And I took this to the then mayor of Kiev and the CEC, showed them the pictures, and had it documented. And they said, yes, something will be done, nothing happened. How can we be sure that the next elections will not have the same sort of people trying to dirty the election and do fraudulent activities again?
The answer is that the whole state machine invented a method to manipulate election results in this country. This is probably why it was so hard for opposition to get better results on elections. What can be done in these terms? Let us be frank, I do not believe in changing legislation, because each time when observers, high-rank observers, told us that we have a problem, the answer of any other Minister of Justice was, why don't we change the legislation? Next time will be better. But just with changing legislation and not implementing the responsibility for violating and electoral fraud, the system had never been actually changed. I also observed the elections, and I can share your point 100%. What can be done this time? The only thing is the high social activity in observing elections. I mean, during Maidan, we understood our social responsibility for what is going on with the destiny of this country. Only the real people participation in elections as members of electoral teams or observers or some activists following the events and tracking the very results of the elections so that they will be accurate and fair. This is the only answer we can give to have free and fair elections following.
I would like to have a suggestion. Go to Canada, there's plenty of Ukrainians who work in the Canadian police. Bring them here, because they know what a good police is. And if you bring the police system from Canada here, you do a lot. And please, stop worrying about crime. There's other politicians today. Start worrying only about Kiev. There's plenty of it. And tell your husband he has good taste.
Yes, sir.
Я думаю, що якщо питань більше немає, пропоную закінчити. Подякувати Олесі за її час. Дуже гарно. Дякую, Олесю, що прийшли.
Дякую, дівчата, з святом.
Так.